Welcome to Tidbits from Acts of the Apostles. We have reached chapter 21, and Paul has just finished a speech to the elders in Milet, elders from Ephesus, and they were not happy with seeing him leave. And the expression that is used is in the opening verse of 21, when we have parted from them. Literally, that means when we have dragged ourselves away. So difficult was it. And let's just look at a couple of the details. It says that we set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos. That's where tourists enjoy visiting today. And the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. So they are sailing along the coastline. That was what sailors would always want to do in those days. They wanted to see the coast. They were scared of the sea. That was a dangerous place. When we had come in sight of Cyprus, leaving it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, for there the ship was to unload the cargo. And just this little small detail. There were no passenger ships those days. If you wanted to go on a travel, you paid for a trip on a cargo ship, and you brought your own food. So you had to care for yourself. There Paul stayed with the disciples in that city, and in verse 7 they have arrived to Syria, to Tyre, when we went on our journey, and they all with their wives and children accompanied us until we were outside the city. And kneeling down on the beach we prayed, they say, and said farewell to one another. Then we went on board the ship, and they returned home. And then it says that when we have finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at Ptolemais, and we greeted the brothers and stayed with them for one day. Ptolemais is present Accra, in ancient times Akko, Haifa, and the brothers here is a typical designation for the whole church. So brothers is gender inclusive, as it is several times in the book of Acts. So these small details, and then we come to Jerusalem. It would have been practical for the overview of the book if there had been a shift in chapter when we come to verse 15 or 16 or 17, because then a new series of events take place. And this series of events center around Jerusalem. Paul has arrived in Jerusalem, and suddenly the narrative slows down. In time period of less than 2 weeks, has been covered by more than 1,800 Greek words. If we compare his travels in 21:20 to 21:16 covers a period of several months and are reported with approximately 1,000 Greek words. So Luke emphasizes by this emphasis the importance of the events in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, Paul is met by the leaders of the church. They are fighting prejudices and hostility from other Jews. And they are really still not too happy with the gospel going out to the Gentiles without them having to becoming Jews. And in order to try to get a better rapport with the Jewish leaders, they persuade Paul to bring a sacrifice and take with him some other people who can present vows in the temple. And more than that, they actually expect him to pay for all of it, which would have been quite expensive. And of course, the small question would be, how did Paul get all that money? And later on we will see that he's expected to have money, and it seems that he was from a good family and had some money for himself. But the attitude of the church in Jerusalem has the exact opposite result of what they expected. There is a kind of irony here. That is, first time Paul visited Jerusalem, the leaders had to secretly bring him out of Jerusalem to avoid that he was killed. Now, at the intervention of the Christian leaders who want to be on a good foot with the Jews, Paul is actually captured in the temple. So instead of having more peace, they got more trouble. Paul bowed in for the sake of cooperation, but one of his followers from Asia, Trophimus, had been seen out in the city, and suddenly in the temple somebody said, "Oh, we have seen him in the temple here too," and he was not there, and then he was caught. The story ends with Paul being taken captive, and from that moment he will never again in the book of Acts be a free man who is allowed to go wherever he wants. But he is also assured that God is with him on his journey. Thank you for listening to this small tidbit from Acts 21. We will continue with the remaining chapters as we go along in this fascinating book.